Hello. Today I'm going to be talking about two of the most important works of the American Revolution, Common Sense by Thomas Paine and the Declaration of Independence by Thomas Jefferson. Both works argue that the Americans had to develop into a new people with their own identity, and therefore deserve to be a new nation. So I'm going to talk about a couple of the points from each of them and how they overlap with each other, as well as how they differ from one another. Starting with Paine's Common Sense, which was published in 1776. Um, it was a radical call to action that was written in ordinary language that ordinary colonists could understand. A couple of key arguments that Paine makes is one that the government is a necessity. He talks about how a society is natural and good, and a government exists only to restrain the vices of humanity. He also argues that the English Constitution, with its monarchy, commons, and aristocracy, is both corrupt and contradictory. So for him, Americans shouldn't cling to the old system of English rule, but instead see themselves as capable of governing without a king. One of the second arguments that Paine makes is his attack on the monarchy and the hereditary succession that exists in England. He mocks the idea that men are born to rule, and he also points out that hereditary succession gives powers to fools and tyrants, and that it doesn't have a basis in scripture or in nature. So therefore, by rejecting the monarchy altogether, Paine is arguing that Americans who are naturally equal need to create a government of their own. And lastly, one of the more significant arguments that Paine makes is that America is already a distinct society, not just an offshoot of English rule. He reminds readers that America is populated by people across Europe, and not just people from England. And therefore, the geography, the resources, and the diversity make them fundamentally different from Britain, which means that Americans, again, are not simply just a offshoot of Enlightenment abroad, but they're something new, and they have a new nationality and a shared destiny. Moving on to the Declaration of Independence by Thomas Jefferson, whereas Paine's Common Sense was more for the ordinary colonist, the Declaration of Independence is more of a formal statement for the rest of the world. One of the first things that Thomas Jefferson does is ground his case in natural rights and equality. Again, one of the most famous declarations in the Declaration of Independence is that all men are created equal, and they have unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that the government exists only to secure these rights, and then when it becomes destructive, the people who are being governed have the right to alter it or abolish it. This universal statement helps give legitimacy to America's claim for independence. One of the second important arguments that Jefferson makes, or maybe that he supports the rest of his argument with, is his list of grievances against King George III. He talks about how the king obstructed laws, dissolved legislature, and imposed taxes without consent, as well as keeping standing armies and waging war against his own subjects. Jefferson pokes at these repeated abuses to prove that Britain is a tyrannical or is under tyrannical rule, and that Americans can't be loyal subjects. So they need to create a nation of their own. Finally, Jefferson concludes with a declaration of national identity. He states that colonies are free and independent states who have the power to make war, create alliances, and conduct trade where they see fit. And it's with this declaration of national identity that America steps into the world stage as a nation and not just a rebellious colony. So how they compare? Both Paine and Jefferson reject the monarchy, but they do it in a little bit different ways. Paine mocks the kingship as unnatural and absurd, while Jefferson demonstrates the tyranny as corrupt through a long list of abuses, right, which kind of combined don't leave any room for reconciliation with Britain. Both also take time to stress that Americans are a new people, where Paine highlights geography and diversity. Jefferson highlights the shared suffering of Americans and the common commitment to natural rights. And then finally, both works move from identity to action. So Paine is speaking directly to the common people, provoking emotions, and urging for an immediate action or the immediate separation, whereas Jefferson is speaking to the world, utilizing law and diplomacy to declare independence. So ultimately, Paine provides the emotional push that ordinary Americans need to see themselves as a new nationality, whereas Jefferson then takes that ideal or that push and transforms it into legal and diplomatic declaration. So together, Common Sense and the Declaration of Independence did more than argue for separation, but they instead defined what it meant to be American. So a free people who were no longer subjects of a king, but instead citizens of their own making.